Thank you guys for tuning in. It's Brant Burt from The Perfect Bass. I'm here with Rek Mohr from the art rock alternative metal band Hurt. Thank you for taking time to hang with us today, man.
Thanks for coming, man.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit first about your role in the band. You are the bass player. How did you get started with this band?
I used to play in a rock band called Leo, and last year in the spring we actually toured with Hurt, and we were supporting them for about a month. I had been in that band for about 4.5 years, and I was kind of unhappy at the time. I wasn't having fun anymore, and so I was actually going to be stepping out at the end of the tour, and I found out that their bass player was stepping down too. So I actually flew out to LA after the tour ended. I booked a one-way ticket, flew out and auditioned, and thankfully got the gig. I've just kind of been working hard ever since.
So Hurt currently has 2 albums, and I'm sure this tour is in support of the later albums.
We just released our third. We had Volume 1 and Volume 2. They were released as 2 separate albums, a year apart, but they were kind of one complete piece of work. And then this past April, we released the newest record, Goodbye to the Machine.
You were involved pretty heavily in the third album. Tell us a little bit about your involvement.
It was a tough album because we started our own label, and this record was written and recorded in like a 2-month period, and we recorded it entirely analog. So it was actually it was a lot of hard work. You know, it's not as easy as just editing something to death. So Paul and I, the guitar player, we did most of the writing for the music. We did probably 90% of the music.
Well, where do you get the inspirations for writing, bass accompaniment parts for an ensemble group like this?
It's one of, I guess I'm kind of one of those bass players that I've always been like, write whatever's good for the song. It's not about, whatever's going to get you the most attention. It's whatever fits the song. The bass players I admire, they're kind of the same way. They know how to mix taste, but at the same time it fits the song. It doesn't step on anything else. I try to stay out of the way when I need to stay out of the way, and shine when I need to shine.
Let's talk about some guys that are like that, that you see yourself kind of molding your bass parts after.
Sure, there's especially in rock music, you got guys like Robert DeLeo, Stone Temple Pilots. He's a big influence because that's a band with one guitar, which Paul is the only one who plays guitar in our band. So I really look to him he knows how to fill in space and create, a lot of sound with just bass and guitar.
You guys just recently acquired a new drummer this year.
Right.
Of course, that's, especially in a trio, that's a huge part, having the bass player and the drummer
right.
locking up and syncing. How do you do that, especially with a new drummer? And then how do you kind of keep that relationship going over time to grow as a small ensemble?
That's a good question. I mean, it's hard when any new element is introduced into the band, but it's specifically the rhythm section. If your rhythm section's out of sync, if the drummer and bass player aren't communicating well and on the same page, it can ruin the whole song, the whole show, really. So it was hard because when I first met him and we started playing together, it was on the record, and we wrote most of the record without a drummer. So a lot of the parts were up in the air, drum-wise, and he really stepped in and played tastefully. I thought he was like we talked about, he was playing for the song. And so watching that, I immediately realized, well, if, we're on the same page as far as that goes.
Now, what are you bringing out on the road whenever you're playing?
Right now, I've got a newer Fender American Jazz, and I've got a newer Fender American P-Bass. The P-Bass I use for certain songs. It lends itself really well to certain songs. I don't use it for everything. I've got those 2, and then when we go back to LA in a couple weeks, I'm also I'll bring out a third Fender Jazz. So that I'll have, just 2 Jazzes and a P-Bass. It's pretty much
all you need. Road dogs. Yeah. I talk to customers every day about the difference in P-Bass and J-Bass. One of the main things is the feel, because the neck is a huge difference. Whenever you're on stage, I mean, you go 1 minute you're playing a P-Bass, next minute you're playing a jazz bass in between songs. 1, do you find that it changes the way you play? And 2, does it really lend itself to the feel of the song, having that bigger neck, having that thinner neck?
It really affects the way I play because, I mean, any bass player that's worth his weight knows that if you're not really feeling it on stage, you're not going to play with the confidence that you need to really make the song come through strong. The P-Bass is great. I use it for a lot of like slower stuff because I like the way the mids sound and the lows, it's a lot boomier of a bass. But for like the rock stuff, I like the jazz because it's got this clean, concise bottom end it's easier to distinguish, I think. A rock show, you've got a big wall of sound. You want that jazz bass to kind of cut through so that people can distinguish it's not just low end. They can actually hear the notes
Right.
being played. That's important.
And I guess you feel too. Do you feel that you play more like the faster, upbeat rock songs you're saying with the jazz bass, and then laid back stuff is kind of lends itself to the P bass?
I do because I think the P bass, because of the way the bottom end sounds, I don't like to really lay into it, because on stage it's almost like a delayed reaction as far as like the low end goes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the jazz, when I hit it, I hear it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's there. It's
Yeah.
present. And I like that. I like to be able to really hear myself well on stage. It's one thing I learned actually not long ago, is that it's worth turning yourself up on stage and being, you know, loud enough to where you can really feel it, because you're going to play so much better and have so much more fun, and it's going to translate,
Sure.
you know, to the audience.
Well, Rek, I think that's about all I got for you today, man. I appreciate you spending time with us and talking a little bit about it.
Thanks for
You know,
coming out.
I appreciate your love for Fender musical instruments as well, and
Absolutely.
that's the kind of the reason we're here to talk about that. So.
I'm a huge fan. I use Fenders every night. I go on stage, I have a Fender Jazz in my hand, and that's just, to me, that's like, how can you go wrong? It's rock and roll as it gets.
Thank you guys for hanging out today. If you get a chance, check out Rek and his band Hurt at hurtband.com, and look for their new album, Goodbye to the Machine, in stores everywhere. They're on tour right now, coming to a city near you to promote the album. If you get a chance, check them out. Once again, I'm Brandon at The Perfect Bass, and as always, you can't stop the rock.
Rock and roll.
perfectbass.com.